Okay, thanks, Kristin. Josef has written a critical analysis essay for his 300-level English course. He's really interested in the topic and worked very hard because he's trying to get a high GPA for applying for law school. However, he heard a rumor that instructors are running papers through detection software to see if generative AI has been used. And if it comes back with any plagiarism, the assignment is given 0. This terrifies Josef because of his law school goal. He's worried that if a machine says he plagiarized, he'll have to say goodbye to that dream. To put his mind at ease, Josef Googles ChatGPT detector and runs his paper through the first 3 major companies to appear on the search engine. His paper comes back 21, 15, and 35% likely to have been AI generated in the different software. Josef is certain he wrote the paper without plagiarizing. So what should he do?
Okay, so this is a hot topic. Okay, we've got a lot of options. I've got 4 options here. You can rank them. You should be able to drag them and rank them. One option is go back in time and don't Google ChatGPT detector. So we're warping space and time here. You can save drafts while you're writing. So he had proof of his writing process. Another option, everyone can see that, right? The link. Oh, here it comes. It's finally updating. Talk to your instructor about whether they will be using an AI detector or a nasty option, which is find an AI that wipes the evidence of the use of AI. I don't know if that exists or not because I wouldn't Google it. But I'm watching all of these responses come in. Thanks everyone for your great responses this time. We just have a lot to talk. 2 and 3 are swapping around a lot. It's quite interesting. Yeah. So that's kind of settling it. So people are really in favor of saving drafts while you're writing. To me, this is a sort of low cost, what's the harm thing to do, especially if it puts your mind at ease as a student, right? But what we'll do is move around, and first I think we'll talk to Sarah Jean.
Sure. Yeah, this one is really interesting. I'm already seeing some of that nervousness pop up in the chat of having your work run through a detector. You know, Turnitin is an example. It's already come up in the chat that checks for similarity to other work that exists. And I believe now they've added a feature to check if it would be AI generated. I would definitely advise against using these tools, students especially, if you are feeling like uncertain about if you've maybe done unintentional plagiarism, something like that, then booking an appointment with the right site would be a good starting place to ensure that you don't do that unintentional plagiarism through, you know, missing citations or ineffective paraphrasing, those kinds of things. But yeah, I think a big part of this conversation is going to be around some of the questions that have come up about, are these tools being used, and what that's going to look like. So maybe I'll pass it on, but my number one suggestion for students would be don't use them. You know, it could just cause more kind of problems and confusion for yourself. Come talk to a writing coach instead.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how it's third place going back in time, and don't Google ChatGPT detector, but I would put that at number one myself. But that's just me. There's lots that we can do. Elaine.
Thanks. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting scenario. One of the things that I think about in that idea of keeping your outlines and keeping your drafts is that you can take it a step back from that even. Go back to that time when you are taking notes based on the article that you're reading or the chapter you're reading, and determine ahead of time exactly how you're going to track quotations, track paraphrases, and track your own thoughts. So for myself, if I'm writing something, I put my own thoughts in a box, because then there's no chance of me mistakenly thinking that that was something that somebody else wrote. When if I'm making note of a quote, I write down the entire citation right then and there, and not necessarily in the right format, but I write down the details that I need: the author, the date, the page, the name of the item that I'm reading, just so that I can keep track of that as being something, so that when I'm actually writing my paper or writing my article, I've got that information handy. And the same thing with paraphrases. Make a note of the author and the date as you're doing those paraphrases, so that you know where that content came from. It's a general good academic integrity practice, and it can help you to avoid a scenario like this where you run it through the chat, through a plagiarism detection software, and then you're freaking out because you think that you've maybe plagiarized, because you get numbers that don't seem to match with your own understanding, and your own, what you've been doing. So, and Sarah Jean's advice of talking to a writing coach is a really great one, because that can help you to work through that process.
Who should I go to next here? Panelists. Eliana? Okay.
Yeah, I do not have anything to contribute at that point. At this point, I'm just going to agree.
Okay, Sarah Jean, you had some points about these as well. Additional points.
Stella, I noticed you took your mic off. Did you want to jump in?
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with Elaine. And I think what's happening now with the fact that these tools are present is actually really changing what's expected of students in terms of the quality of the work that they do. So whereas in the past, it's more important now than ever to be really clear about citing sources of information. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing in terms of the quality of the work that you're doing and the proof of the materials and the validity of the facts that you're bringing into your assignments. So, but it does change the game. And I think that, everybody thinks, oh, this ChatGPT is a nice shortcut and it's going to make things easier and take away, it's going to reduce the time it takes to do assignments and you can do everything at the last minute. And actually, I think it's going to change expectations on the quality of the work that has to be handed in now, because you are going to, as a student, have to be more transparent about where your sources come from. And that's a change of situation. The other thing I wanted to add was Sarah Gina talked very much about don't use plagiarism detectors. And it's not just the confusion around them, it's the quality of them. So at the moment, they really are the most appalling quality. And so OpenAI, who created ChatGPT, put up a detector for AI generated stuff from their own tool and other tools in January of this year, and they took it down in July of this year because, and I quote, as of July 20th, the AI classifier is no longer available due to its low rate of accuracy. And they said that they had put it up to see if something which didn't have great accuracy was at least of some use to people. And they decided that it wasn't, which is, you know, great news, because when something is so poor in accuracy, then, you know, you really don't want it in place. And just to give you a feel of how bad it is, even at the beginning, when they released this, it correctly identified only 26% of AI written text, right? So it got it right only 26% of the time. So 1 in 4 cases, it got it right, which is not great odds, really. And in 9% of the cases, it said it was AI generated when it actually was human generated. And I think 1 in 11 is, you know, 1 in 10 is pretty poor, to be honest. So you need to bear in mind when you're looking at these tools that you wouldn't have these, you wouldn't, you know, if your faculty were answering questions at that rate of accuracy, you wouldn't be very impressed with them. So, you know, perhaps bear in mind that it's not necessarily the answer to your questions. Kristin, is there a policy around using detectors without declaring it?
Yeah, so we have a plagiarism detection policy. It's part of our academic integrity policy at Athabasca. Is it in one of our handouts, or are we going to put it in the chat? I can grab that in a second. But essentially, the gist of it is, if I'm reading that policy correctly, if plagiarism detection software is being used in your course, it needs to be posted in the course and explained to the student before. Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's something else that is being posted, but we'll put it in the chat. So it's essentially what we're saying is artificial intelligence detection software is different than plagiarism detection software. First of all, we have a plagiarism detection software policy, but AI detection software is, you know, shaky at best. We don't have a policy about it. And that's sort of what Stella was talking about. Yes, thank you so much for putting that in the chat. Elaine put the plagiarism detection technology policy in the chat, so you can look through that. I really recommend that students, I know it's not necessarily the most exciting thing to have to go through, but an ounce of, what is it? An ounce of prevention versus a pound of cure. Reading a policy and knowing, I mean, knowing that policy, knowing the misconduct policy would hopefully save the student from Googling, you know, ChatGPT detectors and getting super stressed out. And, you know, these policies empower both of us on the faculty side, the student side. They help us with that trust. Listen, this policy is in the driver's seat. We're both going to use it. And that's how we're going to guide our relationship. Working together for learning, that's what we're here for. We're not here to be academic integrity, you know, detectors or plagiarism detectors. We're looking at learning, and we are updating that, but technology moves pretty quickly. So yeah, are there other suggestions? I know Eliana had to go or has to go. Thanks for sticking around. From our panelists, we are going to be taking some comments that we can take away from this session, so we can guide the next one that we have. Elaine?
Yeah, just one additional resource that I want to share. We've created a academic integrity and artificial intelligence resource guide, and so I'll put the link into the chat. What this includes is information for learners and also for instructors. And we're expecting that we will be continuing to add more content to the guide. So I'll just post that now.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be circulating that. We have a question in the chat, a Read and Write app. Do you mean like Read and Write Gold or the accessibility software? That is usually
All good.
discussed in an accommodation. Yeah, that should be.
No, you should be fine with using text to speech.
Yeah.
Which Read and Write is an example of that. And that's a great proofreading strategy that we teach students at the Write site. That was another thing I was going to suggest for Lee, that by working with a writing coach over time, you can actually learn to identify your own errors. And then you don't maybe need to rely on the tools. I also, would support the use of the tools when it's allowed, like Grammarly, but from a position of trying to learn from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and our final slide on the Menti here is, and we won't screen share it, but we, rewrite and bring new scenarios every time. Our past sessions, which don't deal with AI, but we had one scenario that was about plagiarism, paraphrasing tools in one of our earlier sessions. But we have our previous sessions available, I think on the library YouTube, one or more of them there if you want to check out previous Who Me Cheats. But right now, I have the Menti link in the chat, and we're asking what else would you like to know about AI, and what would you like a future session to focus on? So really help us figure out what another session should focus on. And there's a question in the chat about authentic assessment methods. Absolutely. There's definitely what can I say, a focus amongst a lot of the faculty around trying to adapt and improve assignments on the basis of AI. Yeah, there's a community of practice, working groups. We're all working on that. Please bring suggestions to your instructors and us. I see that there are some responses coming on this chat. People want to know more about different AI tools. I don't think I would be an AI tool educator specifically, but maybe if it's a fit for your course.
Yeah, please add your suggestions to the Menti slide, because
Yes.
then we'll be able to look into them more deeply, see if we can address some of them later.
One of the comments is to have each course updated with what is authorized and what is not. That's a great suggestion. I know a lot of faculty are really thinking about that, putting an announcement. What we have right now is sort of a rule of thumb, which is assume that it's not and talk to your instructor. We're not saying it's not, but talk to your instructor. Yeah. People are asking for creative, authentic assessment methods to adapt to AI. That's great. I want that too. I think that this recording will be added to the YouTube, yes. Someone is requesting a panelist for the next session. we'll take note of all of that.
Thanks everyone for your awesome participation today. Like, just a really rich conversation in the chat, and great panel discussion as well.